Digimon Liberator web novel is here! As of Thursday, May 23rd, it has come out with the first 2 chapters that we have been able to enjoy. Being able to meet the impulsive Yuki and her stubborn partner, Impmon, along with the knowledgeable Winner and his very empathetic partner, Fanbimon. I'm happy to announce that the translation has turned out to be very good. Unlike what they did with Seekers, it seems to have turned out to be very well, which just means probably that they actually used a human being instead of a machine in order to translate this. Today I want to dive into what the first 2 chapters of the Digimon Liberator novel have given us. A quick impression in the beginning for those of you who don't want spoilers, and then a deeper dive afterward for those of you who want to know what happened or are coming back in 3 months and need to know what the heck happened in these 2 chapters in order to understand it and be able to move on to the next one. So let us dive into our brief impressions. So, in the first chapter, it's all about Yuki and Impmon. And it is all about characterization. The characterization of Yuki has a lot of issues and a bright personality, which makes her likable, even if she makes mistakes along the way. Impmon is a very, impish Digimon who is very stubborn and wants to give her a lot of troubles. It establishes a lot more about the world in a new area. It establishes some of the rules and things that they've been able to learn as the debug team with the rogue NPCs, but also several questions that come up. It also is an advertisement. It shows a lot of the different cards that will be coming in the new set. This first one, especially EX7, which will be releasing May 31st in Japan, or in September sometime here in English. And it also talks about another part of the team. It talks about other parts of the world building that establish all things that are generally quite good to see in the web novel itself in order to build on what was already given. Now, this first chapter will maybe take you 10-15 minutes. I mean, everyone reads at slightly different paces, depending on how fast you can read and how much you want to maintain, or how many times a cat walks in on you and you have to pet it. Many different things that can distract you. And chapter 2 follows this formula pretty much the exact same way, except it is with Winner and Fanbimon. It is one chapter of meeting the world and the Digimon, and then another chapter of a duel, of a card battle that they ensue. And Winner and Fanbimon are a very different relationship, much more, you would say much more classic friends. I mean, everyone's friends in a different way, and there are sometimes you give your friends a really hard time more than just about anybody else. That's just how you show your friendship and affection for someone. So, there are many different ways that it works. It shows off more cards that will be coming in BT18, which will be coming in June 28th, or in Japan, or will be in a combined set that's coming out in November for English. It gives us more of a backstory for Winner. It gives us more of just the general vibe of the world. So what do we have in the first 2 chapters is something that, very much like the comic, is a good starting point. A good starting point for the world, for the characters, for battles. It is very promising to me. The biggest problem that it has to overcome is the long break in between, that it will lose its momentum, and I feel like a lot of hype that might be surrounding it might get lost. Now let's take a deeper dive into what actually happened in these chapters, for those of you who want to know more about spoilers or are coming back and needed the summary. So we first look into Novel 1-1, which is named Yuki. It first introduces us into our first new area in the novel that isn't the same as the city that the comic has taken place in, Ruby Mountain, which is a volcano and is a much higher level area than what Shoto and Marissa are in, and likely will not be going there, at least not for a while, or not of their own volition right now. It establishes that temperatures is kind of more just seen in this world. It's not something so immersive that you can feel, so it's not at all given the impression if you fall in lava you die kind of deals. It is something much more like the VR that we experience now, but probably a step above that, much like Eden was in Cyber Sleuth and Hacker's Memory. We established that there are stakes, in fact, for losing to rogue NPCs. As part of the debug team, Yuki is giving a novel emblem, as she calls it, which is this symbol that apparently will help protect her from her data actually being corrupted by these rogue NPCs, but it's still a test thing. So there is actually a danger to fighting these. So, as we are in the comic right now, Shoto is fighting one of these and has, at this point, no idea that there's actually really bad things that could happen to his account, his deck, the world. Anything could happen with corrupting data. I mean, that could have any number of different implications from it. And it turns out that Yuki actually did lose to one of these NPCs that had gone rogue, but it turns out that it's not a situational one. It's one that uses a metallic Dramon and a volcanic Dramon deck. She shows that in her trying to talk to Impmon and console him because she made a mistake. She went in there without a plan, as always it seems, and got herself into trouble, and so there was an issue with it. And after a long time of trying to talk to her stubborn partner, she decides to just put him in the D-Storage, which he can still talk from within, as we've seen with Teromon. But not what we saw from Muchomon, who was not able to talk at all until he was actually summoned from the D-Storage. So it seems like Impmon is another one of the unusual wild Digimon, perhaps. But from losing this, she did find that something is possibly wrong when she looked through her items and found that she has a new Tamer ability, which is something that, if you read the tips, we have learned you can unlock these from fighting different NPCs or answering quizzes and things like that. And it also came with new cards that no one has ever seen before, which turns out that this ability and these cards work together and also are generally work with her partner, Impmon. So for losing, she was rewarded. It was something else outside of the road NPCs trying to prepare her or train her for something? These are some interesting questions that we may eventually have answers to. And then we see her putting her deck together, and she goes back to fight that same rogue NPC with a brand new deck, which she's never tried before. So she's putting at risk fighting a rogue NPC again. This is fitting with her reckless personality that we have seen so far. And this battle mostly shows off the new cards. These battles only show off a couple of turns of the battle itself that are the pivotal moments as she is getting her level 6s out with the brand new Impmon line that was spoiled beforehand, but since it showed up in Novel 1, I'm not as upset by it because it is completely shown here with the new Punkmon, Loudmon, and Heavy Metal Dramon. And it shows how these come together in order to conquer the other deck that she battles against. And it turns out, hey, she's victorious this time. And in so doing, she is happy and seems to make at least some amends with Impmon, even if it doesn't seem like everything is completely smoothed out. I don't know if their relationship will ever allow them to be completely smoothed out. And she speaks of talking about these cards with Altea, which is apparently another member of the debug team who works with an Espimon. Impmon does not seem to like them, but Yuki likes them. So again, two very different characters working together. I always love that dynamic and hope we get to see more of it moving forward. As we move on into Chapter 2 of the novel with Winter, it is very much seems that it is a little bit of a formula almost already between these two it's only 2 chapters. Can you really call it a formula? But the 2 chapters play out very similarly, just using the different characters' approach to things. Where we meet our characters of Winter and his fan Beamon, or Fun Beamon, depending on which version of the name you want to use, together on a rooftop in the main city where our main characters have already been, so there is no mention of them here. And we learn that Winter and Yuki, despite being on the debug team, also share a slightly different relationship where Yuki comes to him because even though he is much younger than her, he seems to be 19 and he's 12. She treats him as a teacher, as she calls him, someone who knows a lot about the card game, thinks things through much more. They've actually formed an unlikely friendship because of this, which is very unusual because Winter doesn't have many friends. So we've already established the relationship between them. We're establishing the relationship between Winter and Fan Beamon, where Fan Beamon is very empathetic. He very much understands others, wants to be with others and understand, which, again, contrasts his partner well. And we hear the story how Yuki got beat by a main scenario NPC, Hyaklomon, one of those that's a mouthful to try and say, that was one of the main scenario NPCs instead in the Emerald Coast, that she wanted to test her new deck again with new cards. Which turns out, gee, these new cards also work just fine in non-rogue NPC encounters as well. And so he decides that he would also like to test it against him. And Beamon seems to think that he wants revenge for his friend, where Winter definitely tries to say that he's the teacher, he must know and see what his student fell to, so he must understand. Obviously, there's probably some bits of it that he cares for Yuki enough that he wants to do this, but that's a little conjecture at this point. And it turns out he also got a new Tamer card ability, and new cards as well. But he beat the rogue NPC in order to get his, or subdued as the novel states. So one was for losing and one was for winning he gained them. Is there some reasoning behind that? We don't know yet. And so he puts together his new deck and decides to go take on this main scenario NPC, and once again it shows only about 2 turns of the battle that really are when things have reached their peak and we get level 7s in play and the high level things all happening. Level 7s, level 6s all over the place. And the pivotal point of a battle that changes it into his favor. And we get to meet Queen Beemon and the new Forge Beemon and Vespamon and a bunch of the new cards that will be coming in the sets there. And so it's once again a fairly quick battle because it only takes up half a chapter. Now, for those of you who are like me, who are just learning the game and kind of know, I think that's enough. That's a little bit of a taste, especially for these battles that are just passing and testing and showing off things, as these battles pretty much are advertisements. I'm just fine with that. But I think some of you who really like the card game might be a little disappointed that there's not more spelled out about the rest of it. That's up to you. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below if you wanted to see more about the actual battles themselves, or are you like me and much more interested in the characterization that Digimon is much more well known for? And afterwards, he's sitting down with Fanbimon, and Fanbimon asks a very interesting question of why did he come here? It turns out Winter has a pretty troubled family. His family is pretty hands-off, just give him his allowance, let him go play his game, collect cards and everything. And he doesn't make a lot of friends, and so here's a place for him to escape, make friends, and things like that. And it's cute that Fanbimon worries about him, but I always wonder, especially for these Digimon that have these personalities, and I assume he's a bit like the others and probably talking the D-storage and everything. They probably don't just disappear when he logs off. What are they doing while their partners aren't? Be an interesting thing to find out. So, I think all in all, the novel is off to a good start as well. I just hope that with the 3-month wait in between, that we will be able to keep up the heightened interest in it, and it won't just die, since we at least have the comic and probably some more tips coming to keep us satiated until then. But what do you think about the novel? Do you think it's off to a good start? Are you already giving up with this long wait? Let me know. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more Digimon content from me. And as always, everyone, remember to be awesome. Until the next one, take care.